This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so good morning, good evening, guys. So today we will be discussing about GC. Okay, so before we continue with today's topic, let's just quickly revise about yesterday's topic that we have uh, discussed. That is JVM memory. Okay, so we'll just quickly go through whatever we have discussed. So we understand how JVM heap is how the JVM memory is divided in the heap area, non-heap area, and there are other memory areas. Then we understood that heap memory is allocated as soon as the JVM is started. Okay, so whatever heap memory size, if you have defined it using the Java options, the JVM will use the same size to reserve it on the physical disk. Otherwise, it will use the default size. Okay. Then we saw that heap is divided basically in the two major parts. One is your younger generation, and the another is your older generation. In the younger generation, your objects get created, right? And the older generation, it gets promoted throughout the GC life cycles. Like the objects are surviving, if they are still referenced in the application by the upcoming objects, that the objects will get tenured, or we can say that the objects get aged, and they are passed back to the preceding spaces. Okay, then we saw that how it actually works. So again, young generation is divided in Eden and survivor space. So Eden space is nothing but the object, the nursery space, or the space where the objects are getting created. Okay, and the survivor spaces are the spaces for shifting these objects. So we also saw that how what is the criteria for the objects getting passed from Eden space to the survivor space, and from survivor to tenure, right? We saw that training there there are specific parameters like tenuring threshold for Eden to survivor, and same way the maximum tenuring threshold for survivor to tenure. Then we saw that old generation, how the objects are getting uh, rolled back to the old generation when they are aged or when they are tenured. So then they are moved to the old generation. How that old generation is behaving when we have a lot of objects in there. So we also have a sorry. We also saw that there are some types of GCs that are needed. So because GC is the GC is the daemon thread which is actually doing this task, which is moving the objects around the spaces in heap side. Okay, so there are different types of GC: serial, parallel, CMS, and G1 GC. So we will go through them in today's session. Okay. After that, we have also seen the memory utilization pattern in JVM, right? The healthy memory utilization. So when we are saying the memory utilization is healthy, we should observe this kind of sawtooth pattern, right? So wherein this is blue line represents the rate of object creation, the rate at which the new objects are getting created. Okay, this black line represents a full GC event or a GC event, right? And this green line represents your memory collection. What are the number of bytes you are collected, right? So if you can say that my JVM started here from 32 megabytes, and as per the application was running, the objects are getting created, and it started increasing, and it reached to the some point when the full GC got triggered, then it again came down. Okay, so when the GC, so that means the GC was able to reclaim all the bytes that has been used, right? So it same has happening through the consecutive cycle. So this is a healthy application, there is no such a problem, this is a normal behavior for any application. Okay, then when we see this kind of behavior, this kind of pattern, memory utilization pattern in your application, it's a sign of leaking application, right? Memory leaking application. In the same way that you can see, this red line is the higher limit for your heap memory, that is the maximum heap size. And this green line again, the represents same thing, it is the number of bytes that is collected by your GC event. Now you can see this is also getting the this bar is green line is getting increasing, it is getting sloped. That means for after each and every GC event, there are less number of bytes that are being recollected. Okay, so this means that there is some problem in your application, which is that's why the GC is not able to collect all the applications, sorry, all the objects, and it is not able to free the space. Okay, so this is how you identify if the application is leaking the memory. Okay, then we saw some JVM memory options specific to the heap area. Okay, and I've also given you guys the assignment for trying out these options and just observe how the heap area restructures, right? When you use these options and when you don't use it, right? So I've shared you one PPT also, I think, and in that I've given the multiple combinations of options plus single options, and so so you'll be better in position to understand when you use these options with JVM how your uh, JVM memory is restructured, heap memory is restructured. Okay, now any question on this previous yesterday's class, please let me know, then we'll move back to the GC class today. Guys, any question? I'm unable to edit Catalina batch file. Okay, Chandan. So what is the exactly problem you are facing, Chandan, for Catalina.batch file?
Hi Chetan, Chandan here.
Yeah, Chandan, tell me.
Okay, so when I try to edit the Catalina batch file and save it,
Mm-hmm.
so it's not allowing me to save. Like, uh,
Yeah, so I know why it is not allowing you to save, because you might have your Tomcats instance running.
okay,
Okay. So so let me just show you. You guys see, you guys can see my screen, right? Okay. So now
yes,
let's see here. Now this is my Catalina.bat file. Okay, and this is the visual VM. Now we can see there is no Tomcat running. Okay, if I edit now, this should allow me to edit. Okay, we are adding the options here, right? I'm just removing it. I'm control is doing it saved. Okay, this options is saved, but now let's see, I just start it up. Now Tomcat is started up. Okay, okay, it started. You can see this Tomcat PID over here, right? So that means Tomcat is started, and for starting it uses catalina.bat file in Windows, right? So now when it is in the starting position, and now if I want to edit it, like if I want to just add xmx 112 MB, and now when I'm saving it, oh, it is still getting saved. So I think for yours you have some other problem. It might have be getting locked by your JVM, Tomcat JVM, because Tomcat is using the Catalina file for starting up. So is that something that you have done, editing the file at the time of starting Tomcat or any kind of thing?
yeah, yeah, I think so. I will try stopped. I will try to do that after stopping the Tomcat.
Okay, yes, just try once stopping, because if you go through these logs, one more thing, if anything is not clear for you, I mean, what is happening inside Tomcat, you can always go back to this Tomcat directory. In Tomcat installation, in the Tomcat folder, you will have this logs file, right? Under the logs, you can see there are different types of logs created. So you just sort it with the date. Localhost access log is when you are accessing the application, and the Catalina log is whatever the changes are made to the cat. So if you check this log file, you will able to understand what is the exactly issue, if anything is not going well in the application or in the Tomcat instance. Okay, so you can see the deployment is
Okay,
finished.
so I have,
Mhm.
yeah, I have one more query. So,
Mm-hmm. Tell me.
uh, when we simply like install Tomcat and we yeah. So when we install Tomcat and I try to uh, like start the Tomcat and but it was throwing one error
Mm-hmm.
that Catalina home
Is
path
not
is not
defined.
defined properly.
Correct.
Yes.
So that means
So I
it
Google
is not.
and fix, but I want to know from
Mhm. Okay, so what you want to do is, Chandan, inside the bin directory, sorry, this not this one. You can find that set set logs or set paths. One bad file is there. Set class path. See, okay. So double click this file first. Before starting, just do a clean startup. So double click this set class file first. I'll just show you what is inside it. It is nothing but they are just setting all the class paths which are required. Okay, so Java home, JRE home, they are setting it up, and if it is not there, so Catalina home is also getting set. Okay, so you just double click this file, bat file, and then try to run. If still it is not getting started, if still you are facing any issues for Catalina.home, you better define that variable. Okay, and before running it, you have to have this environments variable defined, JRE home and Java home. Okay, so I have this environment variables, and I also have Catalina home, right? So I've created that variable because I was experimenting on something, but you need not to create it separately. If it is not working for you, you can create an environment variable for Catalina home. Just navigate to the Apache Tomcat directory where the Catalina file is there. Okay.
okay.
Okay, just let me know if you have any issues, then we'll
No,
try to sort it out.
I Google it and I fixed it. It is working for me.
Okay, good. Okay, sir. Okay, so let's move to today's topic, which is GC. So most of you who have actually attended the demo session, you would be knowing that the agenda, which whatever we are covering over here is. Okay, so we will be going through what is actually GC, then what are the specific metrics that we should monitor for GC, then understanding the GC logs and how do we enable the GC logs. Okay, then we'll go through the log analysis tool for garbage collection and tuning GC and which algorithm to use. This special these last two topics we will take in another session when we are doing hands-on for GC. Okay, so let's just start. Garbage collection. Okay. Are you guys able to see the screen now? Okay. Okay, so let's just move. So what is this garbage collection? So garbage collection is nothing but it is the stop the world process, which actually occurs when the JVM is when the GC is actually triggered. Okay, just a second, guys. I think something is not good. Something is not proper in the slide.
Hello?
Yeah. 1 second, Shannon. I'm just fixing the slide. I think there are some few of the slides got missing in between. I'm just
Oh,
checking the backup of my deck. Just a second. Just give me one.
yeah. Sure. Take your time. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so let's start. So first topic is this: what is garbage collection? So as of now, this term is so familiar to us as a performance tester and engineer that most of us exactly know the meaning of garbage collection. What do you mean by garbage collection? There is a thread when JVM is running, when there are objects which are not referenced, and the daemon thread comes in the picture, and it will wipe up all the objects that are not that are not used or that are not referenced, and it will free up the space. So this is garbage collection. So this is the normal definition that we know. But what actually happens when this GC event occurs? Okay, so let's see. So for every GC event, there is a terminology in the JVM parts, or we can say in the Java, we call it stop the world process. Okay, what is meaning by stop the world? So this is a reference to the JVM, right? So for JVM, stop the world means it is stopping the entire application threads from running. Okay, so because it is giving priority to GC, because GC is a daemon thread. GC is a daemon thread. So understand this thing. So whenever you start up the JVM, I think we have discussed this in some previous session. So whenever you are starting the JVM, you will see inside the threads, if you monitor using our visual VM tool, inside the threads section, you can see there are daemon threads loaded, and there are some native threads or application threads are there. Okay, so daemon threads are threads which are deployed by JVM for doing its own task, or for JVM to get worked. So for the JVM to start working, these daemon threads are needed, right? So GC is nothing but a daemon thread. So stop the world, when a GC is running, GC has a highest priority all over the daemon threads. And when a GC is running, for JVM, it is a stop the world process or stop the world event. So JVM is stopping executing all other threads, and it is giving priority to daemon thread. Okay, and once this thread is executed, okay, so once this GC is completed, the task will, or whatever the threads that have been stopped, that will resume their work. Okay, so whenever we see that we are doing GC tuning, and we are we have to tune the GC for performance, so what are we doing exactly? So we are trying to minimize this gap, this stop the world process. Okay, we'll see that in the upcoming slides, how this gap is different in different types of GC. Okay, so as a Java developer does not explicitly remove the memory, because this is the benefit for your Java developer. For C, a C++ developer, they need to actually take in care of whatever the objects or whatever the memory space they are utilizing throughout their code, throughout their program. And, but for a Java developer, he doesn't has to worry about it. He can directly use any code. He can create new objects within the program, and he can leave that object unattended, because Java has automatic memory management, which in terms comes with GC. So the GC can remove these objects. Okay. So there are the why this GC is happening. So I mean, there is some which is hypothesis is there. Okay, so this it was created on based on some hypothesis that for this object oriented languages, or for object oriented programming languages, when they run the multiple functions and classes together, so most of the objects will become unreachable. So unreachable means they are either not used, or they are either not referenced by any of the upcoming classes, which needs to be properly function for application. So for an A application, if there are multiple 100 classes are defined, so one or two classes have been started first, and then they are not needed, or the objects created by those classes are no longer needed for application to work perfectly. So most of these objects will become unreachable. And second thing is that, so these references from old objects to the upcoming or the newly creating objects, these are very small in number, right? For example, let's say you are adding one page in any kind of application, or let's say you are adding something, or you are updating it. So it is, that means that there is an old object which is already there in the memory, plus you are referring to the new object, you are creating some new on top of that. So these are very small in numbers. So this kind of task, or this kind of uh, percentage occurring number of objects referencing the old objects, referencing the young objects, this percentage is very less. So that's why this on this hypothesis, this garbage collection is formed. So it is actually checking that how many objects are referenced and how many objects are unattached, or unreachable, and it will wipe it out. Okay, so it's clear now the hypothesis for garbage collection, why it is only doing this. I mean, why it is only creating the why it is only sweeping the objects which are not referenced, and why it is only sweeping the objects which are not reachable. Okay. Now you can see, we already saw in the last session that our heap media is divided in the two sessions. Okay, so heap area is divided in your two sessions. One is your younger generation, and another is your older generation. Okay, so how the object allocation is going through. So young generation, as the name suggests, it's young, right? So the objects inside the young generation are very young, so they are created new, right? They are newly born. So these objects will be there in the young generation. Now as the application proceeds further, or as the application is running, there are few objects which are still required for application to be referred by other objects, or the application itself, some application. So these objects will get created to the, that these objects will get promoted to the next generation. Okay, so this promotion is how this promotion is happening. We also saw that, right? Inside Eden space you have inside young generation you have Eden and survivor, right? We also saw that. Just to now we'll just recollect it. How do we do that? So inside Eden space, this is your Eden space, young generation, sorry. So this is your Eden, and then you have S0 and S1, right? So there is a criteria based on which the JVM decides to promote the objects inside the Eden space. So what is that criteria? You have this tenuring threshold. Okay, so this tenuring threshold is defined for your Eden space. It is either 7 or 8, and for this survivor space you have max tenuring threshold. Okay, so this value is typically 15. Okay, so when an object is newly created in hidden space and it is surviving 7 to 8 GC cycles, okay, so that means this object is now promoted. So this has survived 8 GC cycles. It can then now be moved to the survivor space. Similarly, within the survivor space, when an object resides or when an object survives 15 GC cycles, this or this that object will be then promoted to the old generation. Okay, so you can see this space perm generation here. So since since JDK 8, they have removed this permanent generation. Okay, so you will not see that specific space, a space for permanent generation. So it is now embedded with your meta space. Okay, so anything to discuss over here, or it's clear now how the objects getting moved from one space to another space through GC? Please respond, guys. So it is also good for me to understand and which topics we need to discuss. Okay, thank you, Chandra. Okay, so I will assume that it is now clear, and we'll move to the next slide. Okay, thank you. So heap memory before and after GC. Now let's see how the heap memory is structured when a GC occurs, and after the GC cycle is completed, how the heap memory is getting structured. Now you can see green uh, this green tab. So this is just a representation of your young generation is this, and this is within young generation you have this hidden space. Okay, and within young generation these are the survivor space. So you can see this crossed objects. These are the objects which are marked for GC. Okay, so what will happen when a GC cycle arrives? When a GC starts, it will mark the first objects. What objects have to be collected? So what are the objects which are unreachable? Which are the objects which are not reference? So these objects will be first marked. Then it will evaluate whether these objects are residing in the young generation more than the threshold value that we have seen, right? 7 or 8. If yes, let's move them to the survivor space. Okay. Now in survivor space, what is done? Once these objects are moved into the survivor space, you will have some space created in the young generation, hidden generation for new objects. Okay. Now again in survivor space, these objects are transferred from, there is a from survivor and to survivor. We call it S0 and S1, right? So these objects are moved in between two spaces. Okay. So you will ask why do we need to move it again? Okay, because as the hypothesis for GC says that there are most of the objects which are very short lived, right? So these objects cannot sustain much more, so there is no point moving those objects to the old generation directly. It's like the screening criteria for your objects, the labels for screening for your objects to get promoted to the old generation, right? So inside the these objects are there in the either of this space, so it will come into the, let's say, from survivor. Okay, S0. So for the first GC cycle, all these objects are marked that these objects will be moved to the from space, S0 space. Okay, now when next GC cycle occurs, the second GC, this is first, now second GC. In the next GC cycle, what will happen? So whatever the objects are there in your survivor from space, these will get moved to the survivor to space. So S0 to S1, and the same will happen with the hidden generation. Again the GC will mark the objects which are not reachable, which are not referenced, and those objects will get moved to the S0 space. So within S0 and S1 there is another, a cycle is repeating. So on the next GC cycle the objects will give move from S2 to S0, S2 to from the to survivor space to the from survivor space, from S1 to S0. So this moving is also done for a particular threshold, which is maximum tendering threshold. We have seen that it's 50, right? So once this is done, once this any object has survived this threshold, then only it will get to the old generation. Okay, so this is now clear, that same that we have discussed in the previous slide. Thus now with the graphical representation, how this is happening, right? Now what will happen to the memory once an entire GC cycle is completed? Okay, so you can see here in the below picture, after the GC cycle is done, young generation is completely empty now. Okay, so there is a space for new objects for getting created, or either the stack is in the space is empty for, so the at the rate whatever the new objects are arriving, you have some breathing space inside the young generation. And also you can see there are some objects in the two survivor spaces, and some objects are moved to the old generation. From space will be unused. Okay, similarly, it may happen that in some criteria after some GC cycles, here from survivor space will be used and two survivor space will be empty. So likewise, so this also gets moved in between, and these are also getting moved here, and then it will go here like that. Okay, so it is understood that how these objects are moved across the heap areas, heap memory after GC is occurred. Okay, okay, so now just let's check the types of GC. So from JDK 7, so we have this different types of GCs available. Okay, so one is your serial, then second is your parallel, third is parallel old GC, which is compacting again, and fourth is very favorite for everyone is CMS, concurrent mark and speed. And the last one, which is very much new now, garbage collection, sorry, garbage first, the G1 GC. Okay, so now let's just see what happens with every and when the GC algorithm is set to set different types of GC. Okay, let's see. So what is for serial GC? Okay, you can see in the diagram what is this typical GC, serial GC. All just let's do one thing common. So for all GC, they will use this cycle, right? Mark, sweep, and compact. Though it is a serial parallel and may it be a CMS, for all the GCs, mark, sweep, and compact will be there. But the fashion or the way they are doing mark, sweep, and compact, it differs. Okay, so what is the serial GC? It is GC, it is runs into the young generation. It uses the algorithm that marks with compact that we had discussed, right? The first step of the algorithm is to mark the surviving objects in the old generation, right? So as we discussed in this our previous slide, that how these objects are getting marked and then they are getting moved. Okay, so for this GC, it's marking the surviving objects in the old generation. So when we are calling it as a we are evaluating the full GCs over here. Okay, so it is marking the objects in the old generation. Then it will check the heap area from the front and leaves only the surviving objects behind. So this is the sweep cycle. First the mark cycle, then the sweep cycle. Okay, and the last step will be the compaction. So the compaction is nothing but the memory fragmentation that we do in Windows. Similarly, the spaces are the objects are aligned. Okay, so so that the heap space is organized, and you can uh, allow some breathing space for the upcoming objects. Okay, now you can see for the serial GC, as the name suggests, there is only single thread. Okay, so GC daemon thread is only one. Okay, then this GC thread, these the gray colored threads you can see, these are the application threads, and this black thread, it is a GC thread which is actually doing the entire task. So mark, sweep, and compact, all these three phases will be performed by the GC threads. Okay, so this comes in the two stages. For the mark and sweep is happening, and at the latter point the compaction is happening. So you can see this stop the word process. This is the gap. This is we call stop the word, right? So in case of serial GC, you can see only one thread is progressing and rest of the all application threads are paused, and because there is only one thread which has to do the task of marking and sweeping, it is also taking a lot of time. Okay, I mean it takes in seconds or milliseconds, but still for JVM it is a lot of time because your business processes or business application is stopped, right? Now let's come back to this. So for that, for improving on that, now let's see what parallel GC is doing. And one more thing that we need to understand that when serial GC was invented, right? That time there were only single core operating servers. Okay, so the processors of operating servers or servers, they're they're having single core, single processor. So that's why they could not think about that, and that time that serial GC was invented. Now next, when the technology swings up, you have the multi-core, multiple processor servers. So with that, parallel GC comes in picture. So what is parallel GC? So you can see clearly difference. So instead of single thread, you can see there are multiple threads for GC, right? Earlier in the serial GC, there is only single thread of GC which is doing marking and sweeping at first, then the compaction. But in the parallel, you can see there are multiple threads because we have more number of CPU cores, right? The CPU cores are more in this case. So what comes in the advantage, this gaps, stop the word process gap, right? It is less in the parallel GC because there are multiple threads, the parallel threads, daemon threads running for GC, they are doing their job, right? Instead of one person doing the job, now 10%, 10 people are there, they are doing job. Okay, so it reduce the stop the word process, stop the word time. Okay, so that's why it is the parallel GC is called as throughput GC. Okay, because and it is advisable if you have huge number of cores and good enough memory space, so you can use this parallel GC, right? So for example, if your heap size is, let's say, 12 GB, and you are using serial GC, so this is a good point of exercise. So we will try to check it. I will prepare an exercise sheet where you can actually observe the impact, right? So with your CPU cores, what is serial GC doing and what is parallel GC doing. So just to explain, when a heap size is your 12 GB of memory and you are using serial GC, so to swipe out the 12 GB heap space, it takes a lot of time. But in case when you are using parallel GC, so this 12 GB of memory, there are number of parallel threads which are doing the job, so it will take lesser time, okay, to clear out the heap. So that's how this parallel and serial is work. Now let's go to the CMS. GC. So parallel old is also there. So it is running on the old generation. Same whatever we discussed over here, it is running the parallel GC on the old generation. So it is from the JDK5 it is updated because before that it was specifically was not there for old generation. Okay. So the only difference between this and parallel GC is that it's specified for the old generation. Okay, so same steps it goes mark, sweep, and compact. So instead of mark, it's sweep. Here is summary. The summary step for the summary step there it is inside the summary step they are the objects which are survived. These are getting identified and they are separated out from the GC heap. Okay, so it's slightly different from the sweep and the mark sweep compact algorithm, but it goes through the some complicated steps. Now the next stage is there. Now you can see this diagram represents the very well the phenomenon of stop the word process, right? You can see this is left side your serial mark sweep compact, right side you have the concurrent mark sweep collector, right? So in the CMS there is initial mark is an extra sweep is there, then there is a concurrent mark, remark, and then sweep. Okay, so you can see this stop the word pause in the serial GC or serial mark sweep compact. The gap is huge, but in the other GCs like CMS and parallel GC, you can see this is reduced because there are multiple threads are doing the job, right? So let's just understand how your concurrent mark sweep GC works. Okay, so the previous picture you can see this is the picture concurrent mark sweep picture. So there are four steps basically: initial mark, then you have concurrent mark, then remark, and then concurrent sweep. So we'll just understand. So what is the initial mark? So as soon as this GC is triggered, it will first mark the a single daemon thread will get triggered and it will start initial marking on the unreaching objects. Okay, the objects which are not reachable, it will start marking. Then stop the word pause will be released, and once it understands which objects are has to be marked, it will then start this marking with the sorry sorry it will start this marking with the application thread. You can see these blue threads are your application threads. Okay, and this yellow thread or the orange thread, it is your daemon thread or it is your PC thread. So once initially it will identify which of the objects have to be marked, which of the areas have to be accessed for the GC. And then once it is identified, it will start the concurrent mark. So what is the concurrent mark? The concurrent here is for when you're running or the threads with the application thread. You can see these blue threads as well as the orange, right? So that means the application is progressing. The whatever the business requirements are there, whatever the business processes has to run, they are continuing the job. At the same time, the GC thread is also running and it is also marking the objects that has to be collected from the heap. Okay. Now next comes you the remark step. Okay. So now what happens in the remark step? You can see this. This is it's slightly complicated from the previous. The early initial mark step is simple. It's just taking the surviving objects among the objects which are marked. Okay, so that's why their pausing time is short. In the next concurrent mark step, the objects are referenced by the surviving objects that have just been confirmed are tracked and checked. So concurrent marks, that's why you can have the application threads running, because during the initial mark it already knows that what are the objects are surviving and what are the objects which are dead. Okay, so next step is it proceeds while other threads are processed at the same time. In the remark step, the objects were newly added or stopped being referenced in the concurrent mark step are checked. Okay, so whatever the objects that may have missed between the first initial mark and the concurrent mark, that will be remarked. Okay, so whatever the objects which are missed, because we are giving a very short stop the world pause, so initially whatever the surviving objects are there, it is identified and those objects are getting marked. Now in the remark step again, so instead of one GC thread, now it is deploying multiple GC threads to check if any of the objects are left or in between this duration, right? From starting initial mark till reaching the remark, in between this duration, are there any new objects created which are are there any new objects in the criteria which are now unreferenced or which are now unused? So those objects, the remark phase will deal with all these objects will be remarked. Now then comes the concurrent sheet. So what is concurrent sheet? Similarly to concurrent path, it will run with the application threads. Right, your application threads are running. These are not disturbed. At the same way, concurrent sheet will run. So at the same time your application is running, the heap is also cleaned, or we can say garbage is also collected the same time your application running with minimum stop the world. Yes, this time it reduces, right? So if it's a 1 second here, we can say this 0.5 millisecond and 0.5 millisecond over here, right? So this is the advantages of CMS. That's why most of the financial applications you can see that will use the CMS algorithm, because they need to have continuity in their transaction. They need to have the continuity in business flow, right? That's why they are using this CMS algorithm. But though, this is the advantages. The response time for our applications is crucial. I want my application thread to respond as soon as possible, whatever the task is given. So we cannot wait for the GC cycle to come in the picture and stop the world for the JVM and interrupt the application thread. Okay. So though this is the advantage, we have the very good response time, but few of the disadvantages is that it uses a slightly higher CPU and memory from the other GC types. So parallel and serial GC uses slightly more CPU and memory, because there are few other steps mark, which is initial mark, then remark, then your concurrent shift, which uses the multiple threads. Okay, and this is a very important statement, right? So we know that there is mark sweep and compact algorithm, which is actually used for every GC, right? CMS also sees that concurrent mark sweep, but understand that compaction state is not provided by default. Okay? This is from JDK 7, right? So from JDK 7, this compaction is not by default. You have to specifically tell your JVM to compact even if you're using this algorithm CMS. So there are again JVM parameters like this XX. You need to use this. Use like likewise this is used for concurrent mark sweep. You have to say that compact space. As a, it's something like that. I don't exactly remember the name now. Okay, just keep in mind that CMS doesn't compact the memory space automatically. You need to give this specific parameter for that. Okay, now let's move to the latest one GC. Now this is a very interesting one, G1 GC. So this was introduced from your JDK 6 or 7. So inside JDK 6, it was under the experimental features. Okay, so G1 GC, since the JDK 7 they have started introducing it, but it is not yet still stable. So G1 GC is a very good combination of your parallel and CMS. It is a very good combination of parallel and CMS, but it is not still stable. So that's why the applications are not at moved to using G1 GC from CMS. Okay, so you can see that there is a block. Okay, so for G1 GC there is no specific memory block, there is no specific space. Okay, so for G1 entire heap memory is a block, one block. Okay, it will get divided into the segments. So you can see these segments, it will get divided into the segments. Okay, so how it works is once this G1 GC thread is called, it will first divide the memory in the segments, and it will check for the unused objects or the you can see this blue, these are unused objects, so it will check for the unused objects in that segment. Okay, and it will collect for that segment. So what it is doing is actually this entire heap space is there, so it is dividing it. So G1 is dividing it into the smaller chunks, so that it can work faster. So if there are any objects which are not referenced, so these objects will be clean. Okay, and after that what will happen, you can see that gray objects. So gray is nothing but your free space. So this is free space. Green are the live objects which are being referred. Blue are the objects which are gone, which are not referenced, and your gray is the free space. So once this GC cycle is done, you can see this pattern. You can imagine if you just see the gray area, this is not properly structured, so it needs the compaction. So what compaction will do, it will arrange all the live objects in one line, and it will free up the space. So the entire heap space will be singular, or it will be uniform in fashion for upcoming objects to be stored. All right, so this is under still experimental feature, but we will still see the G1 GCL algorithm, and we will try to check how the difference is, how it's making the difference from the CMS and other GC types. Okay, now coming to the important point. Okay, now we are seeing Chandra. Okay, Chandra, I'll take your questions once we describe this topic. Okay, so now we have seen what is the GC, what are the different types of algorithms are there. Now coming to the main topic, when we are seeing that we are doing the load test or we are monitoring a test, are we monitoring GC correctly? That is the question. So what are the things that we need to make sure in the GC, or what are the things that we need to measure in the GC is important. So these are the three listed here, over here, but there are many more parameters are there. We will go through the sessions when we have hands-on. I will show you the actual screen where you can see the multiple GC KPI. Okay, so as of now, just understand that average GC time and maximum GC time. So the time it is taking for your GC. Okay, so what is the exact number of amount of time your JVM is spending for the GC cycle, you know, because for the business or for the application, it does not bother about your GC cycle or how much time your GC is taking, right? So for the business or for the JVM, it is necessary to have to spend maximum time on the business or application threads. So it is also important that how much time of GC is taking out of the entire life duration of the JVM. Right. Then next thing is to check is maximum GC time. First you check average GC time. Next you check maximum GC time. So why it is important, because sometimes it may happen that your application is going through a very good condition, as we see in the previous session. The memory utilization pattern is healthy, the application is healthy, but after some consecutive cycles or some after some heavy duration, let's say 4 or 5 hours or 10 hours, you see that the GC is getting increased, the pause is getting increased. So if the GC time is increased, that means the stop the world process will increase, which is again causing your JVM to freeze, you know, because during the stop the world process, no application thread is getting continued, right? So it is very important for you to measure this. What is the maximum GC time spent and what is the minimum expected throughput of the transaction? Okay, so when we are going to the SLAs and all these things. So let's say, for example, your expectation from your client is that zero point 0.1 second is the minimum SLA. Okay, 0.1 second is the SLA for your any transaction in your application to be performed. And if the maximum GC time is greater than this 0.1 second, let's say if it is 0.5, so that is a problem, because you are expecting your request to give response back within 0.1 second, but the GC is taking maximum 0.5 second. So ultimately your request will be terminated, or the end user who has started this request will see some kind of error message, right? So this is not accepted for the business or for the client. So it is important to measure this time as well, maximum GC time. Sorry. Now there is a GC time distribution. Okay, so within a specific time range, how many GC events occurred? Okay, so most of the time this GC time distribution is used when you are tuning the GC. When a GC tuning is happening, that time the GC time distribution will be helpful to identify for a particular time period how many GC events are occurred. So within 1 or 2 seconds, if there are 100 GCs, minor GCs, and then the same phenomenon is repeated after every 1 or 2 minutes. So based on that, we can see how your application is behaving and do we need to really tune the GC over there. So this is time distribution is also important. Then the next thing is that the GC footprint, right? So whenever a GC task is running, how much percentage of CPU it is using, how much percentage of memory of JVM it is using, right? So this is the footprint. That this data you can get from the nowadays new generation monitoring tools like Dynatrace, AppDynamics, New Relic. All these APMs can give you this data, but that can also be obtained by the existing tools like JMC, your JVisual VM. Okay, so this understand now. Apart from that, there are some other parameters as well, like percentage time spent in GC. So instead of average maximum, there is percentage time spent in GC. So it is calculated on the running percentage of your JVM. The total time for your JVM is running, out of which how many percent of time this GC was running, like that. Okay. Now, to identify the GC behavior or to check whether your GCs are functioning properly or not, you have to have the GC log available, right? So there are two cases the applications can be shipped with, the JVMs can be shipped with. Either you enable the GC log by default. So there are some default few of the JVMs, they ship with the default GC log path, and in some cases you need to specifically enable the GC logs, right? So till Java 8, it was this property was supported by the all Java functions for all the JDKs, right? So now you have to specifically mention the XX. You can see in the screen that print GC details, and you just have to give the GC path, right? Now I will also show you that how do we enable the GC for a particular this JVM or particular Java application. So from Java 9, this option is changed. So instead of this print GC details, you just have to give the log GC path, file path. Okay. So these two options are simplified in single option. So it is xlog GC star, and you just give the path for your GC file. So it's simple. Okay. Now next, understanding the GC logs. Okay. So now keep in mind that there are different types of GC algorithms are there, right? We have seen serial, parallel shift compact, and CMS is there, and then G1 is there. So with different types of GC algorithms, the logs that they are generating, it is not uniform, right? So the way we are seeing the logs for other applications or other servers, so for example, the Tomcat servers, you can have, you can have specified, you will have two different types of files. One is your Catalina.log file, and the other is your access log file, right? So Catalina is for whatever is going on Tomcat, access is for whatever is going on the application which is deployed on Tomcat. So there is no uniform way of logging for GC. So that's why it becomes a little bit task, or it becomes a little hard to interpret what the GC is printing or what GC is giving inside your log site. Okay, so this also varies by the type of JVM you are using. So now we are using hotspot. So it is different for hotspot, it is different for the Suns JVM, it is different for the JRocket, right? For Azul, it is again different. Okay, so Java version so there are multiple factors which affects your structuring of GC log file, right? So it is sometimes it's difficult to interpret what is going through the what is in the GC file. So if you are earlier you're working on Java hotspot VM, some files, some fields are interchanged, right? And based on that you need to clearly first see the very first statement which actually prints the column names, what is this particular column is representing, like that. So this permutation combination, I mentioned that there are easily 60 plus different formats are there, GC log file formats, right? So it is difficult to identify in every format, but at least once we know how to read it, the positions may shift from JVM to JVM, from Java version to Java version, but the information will remain same, right? So we just need to understand how to read the log. Now, how to monitor the GC? Okay, so there are three different ways. Either you have CUI or you have GUI, right? So command line interface and yeah, your graphical user interface. So GUI we already know. We have that Visual GC and all these things. JVisual VM, JConsole, geometry tools are there, right? What is CUI GC? So when you are not allowed to use these tools, or these tools are creating additional overhead, you can use JSTAT, verbose, GC, this kind of commands on your JVM, right? Now you can see this just an example of how these commands works. So it is again statistic tool. So I would urge you guys to follow this bin directory of your Java. We have a lot of sorry, we have a lot of tools inside the Java directory which are less informed, or which are very less known. So this is your Java bin directory, right? You can see inside the bin directory you have a lot of Java applications are there, like Java C, for compilation, Java doc is used for creating the documents. Java H for taking your heaps or H format. The Java P is for Java process, identifying the Java process. Likewise, there are different types of commands are there. So jhat is for your taking your heap dump and memory mapping. So different types of commands are there. So we need to gmap is for your memory dump. Likewise, so jstat is also there. So these commands are there only, right? GPS, JStack, and JStat. So we need to understand these commands. So if you just type JStat and just enter, it will give you all the options. What are the options available, right? So it is saying that what are the flags you can use, right? VMID is your virtual machine identifier. So we are not using any virtual machine over here, an interval, right? I can just show you in the PPT that the options that we have. Okay, so now we are seeing jstat-gc, then we are giving the VMID and interval. Okay, so let's just see if we have one Tomcat running over here. What is the PID for that? It is 24164. Let's see if we can grab the statistics for that. Hyphen option, right? Hyphen. Two four 164. No. Now we can see that whatever the information you are getting over here in this Visual GC, now it is coming on your command line. See S0, GC, S1, and sorry, these are again different terms. What is S0, S1? It is used and it is U for used, and it is C for committed, right? So this is young generation, committed young generation. So these are the different types of the different types of mechanism you can monitor your heap also, or monitor your GC, right? So you just if you just give JStat hyphen help, there are different options. Stat is for statistics, and you can get multiple. Don't know why I'm not able to see. Okay, JStat hyphen options. I need to type. So it will give me the list of options, right? So you can see there are different types of options available: class, compiler, GC, GC capacity, GC cause, GC meta capacity. So these different types of, you need to understand first what it is meaning. So you can explore it and you can understand. Learning by exploring will give you better understanding than by teaching. So just use this kind of commands. Now we have used GC. So let's just take GC capacity for same Tomcat PID. So what type of data it is giving? Now it is giving something different, right? So these parameters we need to understand. So all this can be you can find documented somewhere in the Oracle, and if you need, I will also provide you this the fields and what it is, what the names means, right? So this S0, S1, C, what does it mean? C means the committed bytes you have. Let's see. Okay. Now, like JStat command, we have different types of command. GPS is for identifying the Java processes and all that. Okay. Now moving to the next slide, right? Visual GC or Java Visual VM. So this is a tool, which the tools are there for simplifying your life, right? So instead of finding out all the commands and running all these things, you can clearly see in the Visual VM what is going on your JDK. So we already explored that Visual VM, right? We already running a Visual VM. Now we can see this hidden space is already there inside the Visual VM. In Visual GC tab, we can clearly monitor everything about GC. So GC time is there, the specific distribution is there, how many GC collections event occurred, that is also there, how much time it took, this information is also there, right? So there is different type of, this is the different types of information you have in your Visual VM, right? In the same way, you can go to the monitoring tab. You can see this memory uses pattern that we talked about in the previous session. You can see this is the uniform pattern. Now the GC is happening at the proper interval, so the object recollection by your GC is proper. So there is no specific issue over here, right? So this is all about this garbage collection now tools, and you can see the specific screenshot I have collected when this particular topic I was talking about, this threshold, right? Tenuring threshold, maximum tenuring threshold, and desired survivor size, current survivor size. So this tenuring threshold we can also set. Now you can see this objects 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 till it is given till 15. So 15 is your maximum size for max tenuring threshold. Now here it is defined as 4. So when you are doing this 4, so within 4 cycles only, the objects will get moved from your hidden space to the uh, old generation, young generation to the old generation. Okay, so this is also important to understand how which tools are you are using. This same statistics can be you can get this all by the jstat d command. Okay, but again it is more complex to understand the output of on a command line, because it will take time to interpret what all the fields it is reporting, and this tool is providing the same thing, so why not we use the tool, right? But in case if in any specific project or any specific, let's say, process, you are not allowed to use any other monitoring tools, or you don't have access to any another monitoring tools, or you are too much dependent on third parties, you can actually use these commands. If you have at least the read access on any Unix box, these commands can be, yeah, these commands can be used. Okay, Chandan, I'll take your questions. Let's just see what Chandan has. Okay, so you have two questions, Chandan, if I remember correctly. Okay, so how will development team or architecture team decide which GC approach to select for their application? Will they try all and finalize one? No. So they don't keep trying and finalizing, right? So GC algorithm has to be decided depending on the object creation rate. So I mean there are multiple factors. Object creation rate is one of them. So depending on this multiple factors, that as it is decided, right? How much throughput your first thing is discussed, like what is the objective of that JVM, right? Whether this JVM is needed for performing high throughput. So out of for this JVM, if you are using that JVM as a web server, or this JVM is being used as an application server which requires to provide high throughput. That means high response. Highly responsive. So in that case, they will use this CMS GC. If it does not, if a particular JVM is only processing the packet at a particular time, so in that case it may need not to give you high throughput, because batches output is not depending on anything, or it is not your stopping the business processes. It is something running at the end of the day, end of the business day, right? So for that batches processing on that JVM, you can use a different algorithm which will save some space and save some CPU and memory. So depending on multiple factors, it is decided. But keep in the mind that most of the time you will find CMS algorithm only. For most of the financial applications and most of the sectors, CMS algorithm is preferred because it is a very high performing application, performing GC algorithm, right? I hope that was able to answer your question, Chandan. And then we have Chandan's question: is there any logic behind tenoring threshold sizing? So yes, there is a logic behind tenoring threshold sizing. Let me just quickly go to this slide where we have this tenoring. Right? Okay, so we understand concept properly, right? So what is why this tenoring threshold is there? So if this tenoring threshold is defined for your GC stack, it depending on your tenoring threshold, the GC frequency will be calculated. So now here the tenoring thresholds are very low. This is 1 and this is 4, right? So when tenoring threshold is 1, that means if an object which is moved from hidden to survivor, if it has survived one tenoring threshold, I mean one cycle, so it is eligible to get moved from S0 to S1, right? In the similar fashion, when this object has survived 4 GC cycles from within S0 and S1, it is eligible to move to the O generation. So you understand when you're minimizing your tenoring threshold sim I mean in this way, when you're minimizing the tenoring threshold, you're actually increasing the rate of object movements within the spaces, right? Because these objects will get quickly moved. If the threshold is low, the objects will be moved quickly, and again more number of GC cycles has to be there, right? Because the GC has to this object is eligible for the next generation, going to the next generation as per the threshold. So GC has to come in picture. GC will have to work extra for this objects, though if it is not needed, right? So that's why this tenoring thresholds are important. If the maximum tenoring threshold you can define is 15, so when you're giving the 15 as a maximum tenoring threshold, GC will still have the chance to recollect the objects from the survivor spaces. So most of the times you can see CMS will have this defined 15. Max tenoring threshold will be 15, or tenoring threshold will be 7 to 8, either 7 or 8, right? So half. Why we do that? Because we want to collect the major objects from the hidden space only. We don't want them to go into the old generation, right? So the reason being because minor GC is more economical than a major GC, correct? Because minor GC will only run through this your young space and it will collect the objects from young generation. However, for a major GC, it has to work through the entire heap space, right? It has to go through your young generation plus your old generation. So in order to minimize the upcoming GC efforts, this tenoring threshold has to be specified. Did that answer your question, Chandan? Chandan, you're there? Okay, why it is 50? So it is set by the JVM properties only. So it cannot increase beyond 50. So if if it goes beyond 15, that means you are unnecessarily you're increasing your hidden space. In that case, your minor GC will cause a problem, right? If you are increasing the maximum tenure threshold 50, that means you're asking your JVM to keep the objects still within your young generation, and these objects are not getting moved in the old generation, right? However, if you see the heap structure, you always have higher space allocated to your old generation, right? The purpose of hidden space or the young generation is to make space available for upcoming objects, the new objects, right? If you increase the this threshold size greater than 15, this purpose this does not serve, because hidden space will get occupied with these objects again, and it has to again the same what will happen to the old generation now. It will happen to the hidden generation, because it is getting piled up with the objects, right? We don't want that to happen. If it is piled up, it will again trigger the GC, minor GCs, right? So consecutive GCs will happen in your hidden generation if the tearing threshold is high. I hope I was able to answer your question, Chandan. So let's just move to the next step. Yeah. Is GC tuning required? Okay, so most of the times you have heard people saying, you need to tune GC of your application. You need to tune the for in order to for JVM to perform better, the GC tuning is required. But believe me, GC tuning is the task which is least to be done or last to be done, because most of the applications or nowadays coming JVMs are very so much performance or so much performing that you will least need the GCs to be tuned. Most of the times using the Java option, memory options like XMS, XMX, then you take all the options that we discussed in the previous class. Using all those options, most of the time this Java JVM performance can be picked, right? So you don't need the GC tuning as such. In very rare cases you need to tune GC. Okay, so if you have not set the memory size and too many timeout logs are printed, you need to perform GC tuning on your system. So there are specific criteria, but no one does that. So nowadays JVMs are shipped with proper arguments. So I mean the architectures are giving proper reasons for using every argument. XMS and XMX, all these arguments are defined, right? So you hardly need to tune GC. Plus it is a difficult task, because you have to convince your developers, you have to convince your architectural team that this is required. Because if you're questioning the GC tuning, or if you're questioning that this GC is not due to that GC is not application performance is not good, that means you're questioning their architecture, right? So it is very hard to convince them, so you need to have very good statistics to prove that the GC tuning is required. Okay, so we will see that how do we do that with different types of options available for the GC. So likewise, that the options we saw in the last class, there are few options to enable the GC and to enable the different types of GC algorithms in your JVM. So purpose of GC tuning. So why do we do GC tuning? So there are main two purpose. First is to minimize the number of objects passed to the old area, and second is your decreasing the full GC time. That means decreasing the stop the world, right? So that is why this generating thresholds comes in picture, Chandan. Here you can understand. So this number of objects which are moved to the old generation is limited. So how you can control that? It is controlled by this tenuring threshold. And the whole purpose of tuning GC, that means you're minimizing the stop the world process in order for your in order to your JVM to perform better, right? So then there are some JVM options to be checked for GC tuning. So these are the memory options that we already discussed in previous class. Okay, so I hope you guys will find time to practice these options on your JVM. Similarly, we have these options available for the GCs, to enable serial GC, to enable parallel GC, to enable parallel compacting GC, CMS GC, right? The same fashion. Now, this is over for the session for today. In the next session, we will discuss about monitoring the GC, how the GC should be monitored, and how do you read the GC log files. Okay, but before that, I want you guys to try out these options and observe that how it is impacting or how the GC cycles are changing through your visual GC. The same exercise we did for yesterday, same exercise you have to do for it for this today's session. So I will just quickly show you one. Okay, so let's just use serial GC. So instead of giving the JVM memory parameters, now you just use these parameters. Now I'll need to just stop my Tomcat first. Okay, so Tomcat is stopped. Just verify it again. Stop now. So let's check. Change it into the catalina.bat file. Let's keep that memory space. Plus we add this -x use serial GC. Save this. Start of the Tomcat. Okay, so now you started the Tomcat. You see the new PID over here. Just double click it. Now you can see you are given use serial GC. Now what is your task is to observe how these GCs are happening. Now though it is an idle condition Tomcat, still it will it will progress to the hidden space and the objects will be there. So you just have to observe this entire cycle for GC, how the now hidden space is filled up at this level 33 MB, right? So once this level reaches this, it will call a GC cycle. Now the GCs happen, right? Now it is moved to the old. Now see how much time it's taking for your GC. Now you can see the histogram also over here, right? Tennering threshold and max tennering threshold. So I want you guys to do this exercise also, so you can understand if each and every GC algorithm how much time it is taking, right? Let's see here in this graph. You can see I think for that we need to have JMC. Okay, so next session we'll do one thing. I will show you guys the JMC, right? Java Flight Recorder and the Java Mission Control, and how do we use it for monitoring this GC and entire application. Okay, so as of now you understood what has to be done. You just need to change the GC algorithm and just observe that how it is moving. So now Chandan, you can see this objects is moved to the S1. So this first hidden space it moved to the S1. Then again it old generation you can see it's getting increased. Okay, so that's for today's guys. So I will conclude today's session. If you have any questions, please let me know. We'll answer it and we'll close the session today. And after this session, I will send you the again same exercise for the GC class. Okay, I have some question from Chandra here. Is application thread depended on GC thread? When GC happens, only GC thread will be active and application threads will become inactive. Correct. So correct, Chandra, your understanding is very much correct. And thanks, Meadow. So here inside the threads, you can see there are total live threads now for this particular JVM. So total live threads are there and daemon threads are 39. So always understand these daemon threads will always have a higher priority. Okay, so GC is nothing but it's a daemon thread. If you can see, whenever the GC is occurring over there, you can see one GC daemon over here. See, so now LO, that means it's wait. So you can observe in the visual GC now hidden space is occupying, piling up. Once, as soon as it reaches to this is now 12.8 MB. Now, as soon as it reaches to this value, 33.68, it will, you can see inside the threads tab, this will be green. GC daemon will be running. So this is the daemon threads. All these are daemon threads which are required by your JVM to function, and this will have highest priority over your application threads. Okay, let's just wait for this GC daemon to turn green. Much memory is still pending? 22. So I hope, I mean, I was able to provide you a proper justification of for all the terminologies. Let me know, guys, if you need anything else, or if you want to understand in much more detail. So next session, anyways, we will be covering the GC log files and how do we read it and how to interpret what is written in the GC log file. Okay, so and we also will also get a glimpse of this JMC. Now it is approaching 32 MB. Let's go to the threads. Okay, so this daemon is for your full GC, because serial GC, you can see there is only single GC daemon is there. If when we give parallel and all this GC, you should see multiple GC threads. So it's collected. So minor GC has happened. So it is waiting for the full GC, the GC daemon. Okay, guys. So I think I'm done for this session. Yeah, please. Where we can see application, we can see the application threads in the same view, because now there is no application running. We cannot see anything over here. Let me just quickly run through an application. Now you can see this is the application which is hosted on this Tomcat. Now I'm running this, so we should able to see at least some threads for this JPEG store in your VM. So you can see this HTTP news 8080. So this is your application threads. These are the application threads. The program in this section also you will see this threads option, live threads 43, big 43. So total started 43. The everything about the threads you get here, and when you click on sampler, you will also see the, you should also see the threads. CPU sampling I don't want to do. If I click on memory, I can see the per thread allocation. So you can see these thread names are there. So HTTP new threads are there. So these are the threads which are being used by your application. Okay. Okay, so guys, so we'll discuss all about this thread in threads class, thread term, and we'll discuss about how this threads life cycle goes on, what are the different stages of threads, and how do we identify the thread logs, and how to analyze the thread term. So we'll have this class also, so we can discuss at that time. Right? I will take your questions regarding threads. Okay. So as of now, you guys just focus on these different GC options that we are using and how these options are impacting the performance. Just try to observe from Visual GC. You need not to do anything. You just have to observe it, how the GC cycle is going on, how these objects are getting moved from the new space to from space. Okay. Tomorrow, I don't think we have. If we have a session tomorrow, I will update in the chat group. Okay. Okay, thank you guys. So thanks for listening and enrolling for this session. Let's meet for another session. Now I'm exiting the meeting. Please drop me the mail or you can WhatsApp me if you have any specific questions regarding the session. Bye bye. Have a nice day.